Some R packages are pretty hard to install on an HPC system, and if you're in that situation, using containers is actually a very good approach. The software we use to deal with containers on an HPC system is apptainer, formerly called Singularity. In order to define a container, so basically the operating system which runs in the container and the software stack that is running on it, we need a recipe. That recipe is a text file in which you specify everything that your container should contain. Let's have a look at a recipe that you can use in order to create a container for running R scripts. The first lines define which operating system you're going to use. So in this case, we're going to bootstrap from a Docker container, and we're going to use Ubuntu 22.04 as a distribution. Then we have a number of sections which are labeled with post, and those are commands which are executed in the container itself when it is being created. So the first one is not particularly interesting, but then things get more exciting in the sense that, for instance, this post command here, this post section here, will install the build essentials and the make tool. This one will install all the compilers you require. That is needed when you install certain extensions for R. So this is a C++ compiler, a C compiler, and a Fortran compiler. Next down, there are some mathematical libraries which are quite useful to speed up your computations. So liblapec and libopenblas. Note that you need the development versions of this, so hence the -dev suffix, and this indicates that you will need the header files as well, which is a requirement if you need to do some compilations, some builds of extensions. Then there are some dependencies for R itself, and those are listed here. They're not particularly exciting, but without it, R is not going to run. And then finally, we install R base, which contains the R package, the R software application. Okay, and then lastly, we may need to install some additional libraries which are required for the R extensions we plan to use. For instance, for dealing with geospatial information, GDAL is a useful library, and we also would need that UD units 2 library, and again we require development versions of that, so hence the -dev. Okay, then the next thing we do, we have a setup section, and that in fact simply creates a directory in the image. At the root level, just a setup directory in which we will, in the next section, the file section, copy a file, which we'll look at in a minute. That's install packages.r. So that's just an R script, and we copy that into the setup directory of our container. And then we have a last post section in which we change to the root directory, and we simply execute that R script which we copied in the previous section. Alright, let's have a look at that R script. And as you can see, this is very simple. It just installs packages. And of course, in this case, for demonstration purposes, we just install single package, which is the ggplot2. But of course, you can have a list of install packages statements, which will be executed one by one. So this is quite straightforward. Having the R install in a separate script rather than in the container recipe adds some flexibility in the sense that it's easier to reuse it. For installing additional packages, we only have to include them into the R script to build a new container or a different container. But of course, remember that if there are dependencies on system libraries, such as GDAL, you would have to change the recipe for the container. Okay, now building the container is straightforward. we just use apptainer, build, with the fake root option, because normally you need to be root in order to build the container. However, of course, you don't have sudo rights, you cannot become root on an HPC system. Hence, we fake root, and this will actually work quite nicely. Then we specify the zip file, so that is our singularity image, and then the recipe, which is our container recipe. And we just hit return, sit back and relax. This will take quite a while, and it will start by building the container. So now, as you can see, the installation process is in fact building the R extensions. It's done building ggplot, and now it's writing the zip file, so your image to the disk. This again takes a while. And we're done. So the image is created, and you can start your container.